Dr. Louise Lambert, PhD, is a registered psychologist with 20 years' experience in counseling, mental health and research, and primary healthcare. She has lived in the UAE for 10 years and between teaching in positive psychology globally. Welcome to the Bhavna Healing Podcast, where wisdom meets well-being. Today, we dive into the power of healing with none other than Dr. Louise Lambert, exploring the science behind emotions, decision-making, and personal growth.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Ask Bhavna, a podcast by Bhavna Healing. I am Shivangi, your host, and I'm incredibly excited for today's episode. Today, we have with us Dr. Louise Lambert. She is a registered psychologist, researcher, and professor who specializes in positive psychology. She is the Director of Programming and Policy at happinessmatters.org, where she develops programs aimed at enhancing well-being. Thank you so much for being here with us. We are so happy to have you, Dr. Lambert.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Of course. The pleasure is entirely ours. All right. So right off the bat, then, I'm very curious about your career in positive psychology, given that it's not a very conventional career to pursue, even within the field of psychology. So what led you to pursue this career?
I think it was more of an accident, honestly. So I worked in mental health for many years where, as you know, it's depression, anxiety, major mental health disorders, also domestic violence, eating disorders. And I was doing my doctorate degree at the same time, and I found this course in positive psychology. And I thought, wow, that's going to be an easy A. I definitely need to take that course. I did get the A, but more than that, I got a huge shift in how I saw psychology. So for once, this was the psychology I'd always wanted and was always looking for and thought psychology was, but wasn't, in fact. So positive psychology really kind of opened my eyes to the other half of human existence and the other half of human experience, where people, the goal is to feel good and not only less miserable. So that just kind of opened up a whole new area for me. At the time I was working in mental health, I was running depression groups. So you know how happy those are. And I went to my supervisor and said, look, can we just try something different? I've taken this course in positive psych. I'm a bit of a research nerd. I can put a course together and let's see what happens. So she said, yeah, let's do it. So I did that, put together a 6-week course, the Happiness 101 program, and we ran it. And it was like, wow, why didn't we do this before? So the results were much better than the standard CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy groups. And we published that study, and then it just kind of went from there. And so I shifted into positive psychology and never really looked back. And that's where it started.
Fantastic. And that brings me to my next question, which is, how would you define positive psychology in a way that resonates with everyone who may be listening in to us?
Yeah, I think it's exactly that, the other half of human existence. So when we think about mainstream psychology, it's very much focused on everything that can go wrong. So again, depression, anxiety, negative emotional experiences, all the bad stuff that happens to people. And, you know, I mean, there's use for mainstream psychology. Obviously, when these things happen, people want help with them. But as a result of always focusing on the negative, we've kind of forgotten, and I think psychology has lost its way a little bit. We've forgotten that there are other things in life like joy, love, gratitude, curiosity, states of flow, character strengths. There's a lot of other things we could be looking at. So positive psychology uses the same rigorous science, the scientific method, to measure, to apply, to discover, to uncover different experiences, but just on the positive side. So it is a science, it is a psychology, just like all the other branches. We just look at different things. That's it. And those things tend to be on the positive side.
All right. And I'm wondering, given that there are misconceptions that we hear, right, about almost everything these days. So what
Yeah.
are some of the most interesting, or let me say bizarre, misconceptions you've heard about positive psychology?
Yeah, and maybe persistent is the
Yeah.
word you're looking for. So first of all, even in positive psychology, we hate the word positive because it makes it seem like you have to be positive, you have to be happy all the time. And that's not what it means. It was really just to demarcate and differentiate what we did from the other half of psychology. And positive is really a misnomer because we don't call mainstream psychology negative psychology. So that name has kind of stuck, and I wish that name would be removed or changed to something better, but it gives people this false impression that positive psychology is about positivity, and it's not. We don't look at positivity. It's not really a thing. Like, what does positivity mean, actually? So just the idea of the positive. Another misconception is that you have to be happy all the time. That can be further from the truth. If you are happy all the time, that would actually raise alarm bells for me, because I would think, are you okay? Like, are you manic? Do you need to be medicated? Because that's not normal, right? We have to make room for the negative things that happen to us, and we need to respond to those, and we need to reflect on those, and there's lots to be learned from negative experiences as well. So no, you do not need to be happy all the time, but rather we're looking for kind of a chronic state of happiness where you're happy most of the time, unless you're not. And then when you're not, then don't be. Deal with that part of your life. Like, it's fine. Other misconceptions, I think there's a misconception that gets applied to me. So people will often say, oh, you must be happy all the time. I'm like, why would I be happy all the time? Like, so it's kind of like saying to a doctor, you must be healthy. Why are you sick? Right? So again, positive psychology is really looking at the skills and strategies that we can use to improve our lives. And those work insofar as you use them. So I use some. I don't use them all the time. I don't use them every day. I could probably use them more as well. But yeah, again, it's not normal to be happy all the time, right? Other misconceptions, I can't think of any off the top of my head, but I'm sure I'll think of more. So we can just carry on and circle back to those as we go.
Absolutely, would love to. And definitely, it sounds bizarre to have to stay happy all the time. So
Yeah,
completely
it's
with
a lot
you
of work. It's a lot of
on
work.
that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how would you say that positive psychology is related to or differs from other branches of psychology?
Yeah, look, it's similar. It's exactly the same in the sense that we use the same scientific method. So it is a science, and it is a psychology. And people, again, get hung up on the word positive and they forget the word psychology. So it's a psychology. It operates like all the rest in the sense that it has its own theoretical models, its own measures, scales, its own concepts, its own way of understanding human nature. So from that sense, it's exactly the same. The only difference is, rather than focusing again on problems to solve, we also, it's not that we don't look at problems to solve, because if we think of the earliest positive psychology applications were actually in depression. That's where they were first validated. And actually, that's where they work best, honestly. Over time, they were applied to everybody else. So from that sense, they're, universal, I would say. And so they just simply differ in the fact that we're trying to amplify positive emotional experiences, positive states, and just really what makes life worth living and approaching versus trying to move away from and avoid.
Sure, yeah.
But to go a little further, if your listeners are already into psychology, there are definitely, they will find overlap with cognitive psychology. I mean, that's pretty broad. It's how you think. So we also tackle how you think. You'll also find overlap with behavioral psychology, because obviously that's what you do. We also tackle actions. So there is overlap, but it is also its own distinct field.
Sure, sure. And what would you say is the relationship of positive psychology and self-help?
Yes. So self-help. I know this may ruffle feathers because people love self-help. So we think of, the Tony Robbins, no offense to Tony Robbins, Mel Robbins. They all seem to have Robbins as the last name. I don't know why. But kind of all these books that you read in the bookshop. Now, there's nothing wrong with those. And I spent a lot of years reading all that stuff as well, and then realizing over time that they're really all saying the same thing, just rehashed with different words. Some are good, some are based in science, some are entirely made up in somebody's worldview of how you should live your life. But that's the problem with self-help, is that it becomes difficult to know what is empirically validated and what has evidence and weight for it versus what is somebody's idea and vision of the world and is purely somebody's opinion. So, and all branches of psychology have fallen victim to this, that they kind of slip into that self-help. Again, there's nothing wrong with it, but if you are going to read books, at a minimum, try to find things where there's evidence. And how do you know if there's evidence? Generally, you look at the back of the book, if there's references to scientific studies, footnotes linking to scientific studies, but also the credentials of that person. So are they a psychologist? Are they potentially a social worker, medical doctor, psychiatrist, something like that? And I'm not suggesting they are the only people who know things, but contrast that with somebody who is, an inspirational speaker who played basketball their whole life. I'm sure the story's great, but we don't know if what they're telling you has scientific value and is really going to change your life. That's all.
Absolutely. And I'm glad that you started talking about research and research informed practices, and because
Yeah.
that's a great segue to talking a little bit about your research. So, Dr. Lambert, you've done a lot of work on positive psychology in Arab cultures, so could you share some key insights from your research in this area?
So I've done a lot of research in the area. As it does, the hypotheses change over time. Probably some of my earlier studies, though, were looking at do positive psychology interventions work in the region? They do. In fact, the rate of efficacy is similar to other parts of the world. So that was some of the early ones. Other studies I've done are looking at how people define happiness. And this is where I really was struck by the differences. So in the West, and also in much of the research, when you ask people what makes them happy, they define it through themselves. I like to do sports. I do this. Or my feelings matter. So it's very much focused around the individual. When I ask those same questions to some of my students here who are either Emirati nationals or other, well, I say other just for ease of comparison, but other Arab countries, also India as well, that I was completely absent. It was when my parents are happy with me, when my sister is proud of me, so it was very much group focused. And I thought, oh, that's very interesting because most of our interventions in positive psychology are self-focused. Focus on your thoughts, focus on your emotions, focus on your actions. And so I quickly realized, oh, if we're focusing on the I, to people who associate and identify with the we have a problem with their interventions. So I was not the first to see this as well, or the only one to see this. So in recent years, positive psychology has gotten much, much, much better at developing interventions for groups, for couples, for families, for dyads, where the focus is on us and we. So that has shifted. There's still lots of work to do there because we are still very much heavily focusing on the I. But that was kind of one of the biggest differences that stood out. One other area that I find like really fascinating that I did not know about. I follow Mohsen Joshinlu, who's actually become a good friend over time. And he does a lot of studies on the fear of happiness. So when people are actually scared of being happy for a wide range of reasons. Now, we also see this in the West, but it tends to be more prevalent in certain pockets, certain areas of the world. And I also found that here as well, not just in Arab cultures, but again, also because in the UAE, there's a sizable Indian population as well. And that is really this belief that if I am happy, if I feel happiness, or if I show happiness, something bad is going to happen. So either that will be, a punishment from God, or it could be social. People will reject me. People will become suspicious. What are you up to? Because why are you so happy? Because we're all meant to do the same thing, right? And other people also just didn't want to set themselves up for failure. So some of this also I noticed in some of the studies that we did that tended to be more prevalent with students who came from countries where there was war, there was civil upheaval, there was just a lot of chaos, and it was stupid actually to be happy, because you're only going to be disappointed anyway. And much of your circumstances are defined maybe by what's happening around you. So happiness would not be the smartest choice. So that really opened my eyes to, again, if we're trying to encourage people to be happier, maybe we need to market it differently. Maybe we need to talk about happiness differently. Maybe we just need a better word. Maybe happiness is a bad word. Maybe we need to call it, I don't know, a more positive state of mind. But even positive has a value attached to it. So I haven't figured that out yet. But again, it really raises the question, if people see happiness as a bad thing, then how do we get them to be happier? I don't know.
Yeah.
So lots of interesting things, and I'm sure there's much more yet to be uncovered, but it's not the same, and it does differ by region, definitely.
Absolutely. That is quite insightful. Actually, I had not thought about it this way, that happiness could also be a bad word. I mean, as a therapist, often therapy is a bad word, and we struggle with that. And mental health is a bad word. And to hear that even happiness could be construed as a bad word is, yeah.
It has a huge amount of stigma.
Yeah.
Actually, we stigmatize happiness in the same way we stigmatize mental health. It's really interesting. And the fear of happiness, that fear, I think, is a really good word, because, even in the West, if you've been depressed your whole life and now somebody's saying, I have skills and strategies that you could use to be happier, not everybody will take it. Now, do people want to be happy? Yeah, sure. But the costs of being happy are also pretty big. You have to let go of this identity. People will see you and experience you differently, and you may get advantages out of that particular identity that, also come with costs, but there are some advantages to it. So yeah, it's a big shift. It's a big request of people that I think we take for granted and haven't really accounted for in the science yet. And how do we surmount that? I don't know.
Absolutely. And right off the bat, do you have any suggestions in terms of if someone's experiencing this fear of happiness?
So one of the things we did, and it just came to mind as I was saying, we don't know, but I thought, no, wait, we do. So one of the studies I did with my university students, so as part of the semester, this was just in an intro psych class, the last 30 minutes of every class, I did positive psychology with them. And it was very interesting, because in the first 2-3 weeks, I had students come to me and say, Miss, I hate this. You're asking us to think about happiness. It's making me unhappy. Like, I don't like this. I hate this class. And I'm like, whoa, this is supposed to make you happy, right? And what I realized is, if yes, sometimes thinking about your happiness can make you unhappy, because then suddenly you realize, oh gosh, I'm not as happy as I could be. You start noticing it. You start looking at other people and saying, well, that person's way happier, and they actually have less, or they have more and they're happy. Like, you start thinking about, where am I in my life, and am I doing as much as I can, and do I know how to do more. And then suddenly maybe those skills you realize you don't have, you have no idea of even where to start. So that came out. But the other thing that came out was this idea of locus of control. Where do you place responsibility for happiness? So in the West, we place responsibility for happiness on us. If I'm unhappy, that's my fault. If I did something good, I'll be happy about it. So it's very much I control how I feel, I control what I do, I control how I see the world. In other places where the locus of control is external, other people decide your happiness, whether that is people in your collective circle, whether it's parents, whether it's siblings, or whether it's God. If God's happy with you, he'll give you happiness. If not, work harder. So, if you place happiness outside of you, then there is nothing for you to do. There's no need for skills. And highlighting that you don't have those skills can actually make people feel bad and really awkward, because it's like, wait, you're telling me I have control, but I've been taught my whole life I don't. And now I also realize I don't have the skills anyway. What am I supposed to do here? So one thing that did come out in our studies is that the locus of control also shifted. So as people started to learn more about happiness, that here are things you can do through skills, through activities, through changing your perception, your thoughts, by interacting with people differently, you can change your happiness. So we saw two things: level of fear drop, locus of control become slightly more internal than external, and happiness levels go up, but not all the time. But at a minimum, we did see the shift in fear and locus of control. So simply giving people information about happiness so that they understand what it is, how to get it. Now, whether they do something about it or not, that's a different story. But the psychoeducation, the emotional literacy around happiness actually did make a difference, because now you're taking this mysterious concept and you're putting into something concrete, tangible, with skills attached, and people go, this is not as mysterious as I thought it was. If I wanted to, I know I could.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think demystification would always help. I would
Yeah,
agree.
yeah.
And
Because I think sometimes what happens in our mind, people think is a bit of a mystery, and it's not that mysterious.
I'm sure that this is very useful for our listeners. So, just connected to that, if you could also talk a little bit more about other practical everyday applications.
Yeah. So in positive psychology, we talk a lot about, or we try to uncover what are called positive psychology interventions. So PPIs, that's the acronym. And these PPIs, there's probably 50 or 60 that are known at the moment. But I mean, I just read another study last night, a new intervention has come out. So we're developing more and more of these. Now, some work better than others, because again, we're always testing them, but they work quite well. So typically in positive psych, we test people before. So we might measure positive emotional experiences, also negative emotional experiences, how satisfied people are with their lives. We might also measure meaning, the use of character strengths. There's a lot of different ways and a lot of different things that we measure. So we would measure people before on whatever measure of choice. We give the intervention, the PPI. We will wait maybe a week, a day, a month, 3 months, however long, and then we measure again. And then we measure again far after that to see whether the gains have held. So that's how we do it. Now, what are those interventions? Again, there's many, but it could be something as easy as optimism. So using optimism on a daily basis, shifting and forcing yourself to find the good in situations. It could be something like savoring. So savoring is really about using our senses, whether that is smell, taste, touch, hear, whatever that happens to be, to really immerse ourselves in experiences. So for example, you're going to a concert. Pay attention to the music, notice the people, sing, sing out loud, right? Be in the moment. And that sounds really simple, but most of us don't do that. We go through lives, we're stuck in our heads, we're thinking about things. Goodness is happening all around us, and we miss the whole thing. So there could be others like capitalization. Capitalization, we do this with other people. So this is being happy for others. So if somebody tells you, oh, yeah, I just got a promotion, instead of saying, oh, congratulations, and then changing the topic, like spend a bit of time there and go, wow, that's awesome. Tell me about it. Tell me what this means for you. What are your next steps? How do you feel about this? Who are you going to tell? How are you going to celebrate? Now, that might seem a bit odd, but when you do that, you are extending their positive emotional experience, but also you get to feel some of their positive experience and experience that for yourself. So that's free points for you. So that's capitalization. Gosh, there's, mindfulness is another one, gratitude, appreciation. Again, there's a whole list of them, but and the reason why there are so many, again, some are focused on individuals, some are focused on people, groups, friends, partners, and the idea is that people will experiment with these. Some you will love, some you will find weird and not want to use again. Great, then don't. And a good example there is gratitude. We talk about gratitude all the time. And for some people, they love it and it really works. I'm one of those people that I hate gratitude. I don't use it. It doesn't do anything for me. So I don't. I use other things. So it's okay for people to say, I don't like this intervention. Find the one that works. Find many of them that work and just do those. So it's really about find the recipe that fits for you.
I think
So
that's
I
the
hope
perfect.
that helped with interventions. Yeah, there's many.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's the perfect quote. Find the recipe that works. And just to talk a little bit about adversity, those who are struggling with something that is incredibly difficult that has happened in their lives. If you had some suggestions of some interventions that would help them bounce back in times of adversity.
Yeah. So again, different things are going to work for different people. But I think this is where optimism is important. But I want to define what is optimism, because people think optimism is just like, yay, everything's great. And actually, no, optimism is quite serious. Optimism is about going, okay, you know what? This sucks. I've encountered this. It's terrible. It's miserable. And let's acknowledge that, so I think it's okay to acknowledge what is bad, what is not working, and also how you feel about that. Now, the key here is don't dwell on it too long, though, because anything we kind of get comfortable with and start exploring becomes comfortable and we can get stuck on that. And as humans, we get stuck on things very easily. But why? It doesn't matter why, it just did. Unless, of course, you see a pattern that keeps happening over and over again, then you might want to ask yourself why. So it's knowing, this is where self-talk becomes important, but also managing our thoughts, managing where we allow ourselves to go, and is it useful? We also need to know when to say, okay, that's enough. That's enough thinking. And now what do I need to do? So optimism can help us shift into that and think about, what could be good about this? So I have a friend, like literally last week, who got fired, as seems to be happening everywhere these days. And, immediately it's the, I did not see that coming. Oh my gosh, I'm upset. It happened to me, not this person, So I just said to him, just be miserable this week. Don't worry about it. This week, just let yourself be miserable. Go for it. Even eat ice cream, like do everything you need to do. But next week, you're going to do something different. And it's really thinking about, if I saw this as an opportunity, what would that opportunity be? What have I always wanted to do, but did not have the time, space to be able to do that in? If this experience was designed to tell me something about how I've been living my life, what would that be? So look, we can ask multiple questions, but it's simply about, how do I have a different conversation with myself about this situation? And what are the good things that could be in it? Because there always are. So he eventually said, well, I've always hated my boss anyway. There you go. That's great. And really, I was doing the job because it was a job, but it didn't really make my heart sing. Now, that's also easy to do when you have enough resources. So he's got a bit of time, but has started a whole new different career direction and has seen this as an opening, an opportunity, and is really running with it and taking it. Now, will it work or not? That time will tell. But it's the idea of, take the risk, be optimistic, because it might just work. Take the risk, say yes. So having a different conversation. So optimism, I think, is a really good one. The other one is self-compassion, which I kind of described in that week 1. Let yourself feel bad. It's okay. So self-compassion is not about have pity on yourself. It's not about, oh, I'm terrible, I'm bad at my job. No, that's not what self-compassion is. Self-compassion is treat yourself with the same kindness as somebody else would treat you. Another way of thinking about self-compassion is, if you had a broken leg, would you force yourself to walk on it? Of course you wouldn't. You would say, no, I need to I need to sit here with my cast up and take a little break for a while, take a little rest for a while, and not push myself because it's not the time. So we can kind of see a broken leg in the same way we would see a very bad day, a very bad event. You can be kind to yourself, take a little rest, think about what you're going to do, and then set off again. And it's good to take those rests because that's where the magic is. That's where we discover things about ourselves. That's where we think about new opportunities. If we keep pushing and pushing, pushing past the point, we just get tired. And that's it. And we just feel worse and worse about ourselves. So I think those are 2 that I would look at is, allow yourself to feel bad. It's okay. But then force yourself to think about what if, what next.
Absolutely. I think that's a very helpful framework to allow yourself to feel bad and then find the opportunity and find the optimism because it might just work, as you just said.
Yeah. And it
Absolutely.
probably will. I mean, nothing stays the same. Probably will.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I'm also glad that you sort of started talking about workplaces
Okay.
impacting in this instance that you mentioned, because that's also related to my next question. Given that your work extends to policy, I'm curious about the insights you may have on workplaces and how is it that workplaces can foster well-being?
And this is the big question, isn't it? Because everybody's trying to figure out how to make work less miserable. So when I go into workplaces, it looks, some of it is also going to depend on the workplace and the type of industry, but there are many commonalities, and the research would also confirm this as well. So first and foremost is thinking about where is the issue, and the issue is almost never with employees. And yet, that's where organizations tend to focus the most because it's the easiest to ask people, you make the change. But actually, if you think about, how we hire people, we generally don't hire people who are upset, angry, miserable, and depressed. They become that way as a result of workplaces. So then that really demands workplaces think about, gosh, what is it we're doing to people? What's the experience we're giving people that this is where they end up? So necessarily that requires us to go further up the food chain, if you will, and to start thinking about, what are the messages that we are sending to people? What are we modeling in our behavior? What are we saying we want, but actually rewarding, which is often very different as well. So generally, when it comes to well-being, it comes down to not thinking about what's in the heads of people, but rather in the spaces in between people. How do we treat people? How do we see people? How do we listen and hear people? How do we matter? How do we make people feel they matter? And the role of leadership in doing that. So when I go into workplaces, I will often say, look, we could do this, but we need to start here. So if we need to put all of these actions in order, this is where we need to begin. And it's typically around leadership behaviors, because it doesn't matter what you ask people to do. If you're not willing to do it, it's lost all credibility, and you will need to pull people kicking and screaming to doing something different. So there are a number of different leadership behaviors that we talk about. Again, one of the studies that I love is by Jessica Grossmeyer, who published in Americans, I think it's the Public Health Journal. Anyway, I can find it for your listeners, but really looking at what those behaviors are and how impactful they are. So leadership behaviors, often we talk about getting sign off or buy-in from leaders, which is necessary, of course, but that is the bare minimum. If we think about what that is, it's literally signing the check, signing the contract. That's it. We need more than that from leaders. They need to be showing up at well-being programming. They need to be talking about well-being and asking people about it. Hey, I went cycling this morning before work. What did you do to improve your well-being today? Okay, it's a little bit extreme, but talking about it, modeling good well-being behaviors. So not emailing people at 10 o'clock at night. Now, if you're emailing people at 10 o'clock at night, that's on you, but at a minimum, schedule it so it only goes off at 8 o'clock the next morning. Asking managers about well-being and how they are implementing it into their teams. So holding people accountable for well-being scores, for example. So starting to, look at what is the distribution of well-being in organizations. Where is it high? Where are we doing well? And how do we keep replicating that? Where is it low? And why? What are we doing about that? But also holding people accountable to those scores, maybe measuring people on a quarterly basis and holding managers accountable to what's going on in your team. Why is everybody so unhappy? Also tying well-being to business outcomes. This is also important. And again, only leadership can do that, to be able to say, look, when people are happier, this is the outcome we get in terms of productivity, performance, profitability, but to start to link that to workplace outcomes so that people see the direct link, but again, that people are held accountable to it. So there are a number of things that we can do to make workplace well-being work. There are a number of things we could do to make workplace well-being fail. And leadership behavior is one of them. The other one is looking at the role of managers. So again, we focus on employees. That's not where the issue is. But again, the research is quite compelling on this, that managers drive 70% of employee well-being. That's actually more than employees themselves. So to focus on employees, again, doesn't make sense. You're wasting resources by doing that. So a lot of my work with managers is looking at how do we help them implement, apply, use, nurture, and really infuse their interactions with well-being principles. So in short, that's a long way of saying, how do we help managers see their people, hear their people, ask the right questions, fix relationships, that is their responsibility, amplify relationships that are already doing well, but even more of that. How do we help them notice when people aren't well and respond to that in a way that makes sense? So not just la la la, I can't see that, but no, that is your job as well. How do we help them understand their presence? So just simple body language. If somebody's coming to you with a query and your arms are crossed and you're, right? So that kind of sends people the message, I don't care. So in their demeanor, how they show up, again, in their curiosity, in their sharing of vulnerability, in disclosing certain pieces of information, trusting people with that. So there's a ton of different actions, again, that have been identified in the research literature, and we can teach managers this, and it has a huge impact on their teams. So by the time you do leadership, by the time you do managers, there should practically be nothing left to do with employees. But if you really want to go the whole 9 yards, then it's also about helping employees learn the skills of positive psychology. So teaching them PPIs that they can use with their colleagues, that they can use at home with their families, with their kids, that they can also use with customers as well. So there's a lot of different ways that we can apply this. And also good research showing that when employees are happier in their personal life, they are happier at work too. So they bring it to work. It's not the other way around. If you're happy at work, but not in your life, it's not really going to do much to improve you. But the other way around is true. So giving people these skills is like the greatest gift organizations can give, provided they have fixed everything uphill so that employees can show up, be at their best, and do their best work.
Absolutely. I love that there's a gamut of options, and yet you talk about accountability and the importance for the leadership taking responsibility for employee well-being.
Yeah. And that comes up over and over and over again. So if you want to watch a program fail, just get the leader to sign off, and then it stops there. Nothing will move forward, or very painfully and very with weak results, if any.
Absolutely. And with that, I want to move us into talking about your new program. Since you develop programs that enhance well-being, I'm sure our listeners would love to hear about it, would love to know how to engage with it, how to find out more about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for reminding me. I'd forgotten about it myself. So all these positive psychology interventions, again, are hugely impactful. They have evidence for them. They're also just very interesting topics that come up in positive psychology, whether it's philosophy or, well-being economics, whether it's application in education or for health. There's a lot of cool stuff to think about, and that apply to everybody because everybody's impacted by their own well-being. So I have developed a program, 10 different modules. It's really quite rich with skills. There's about 14 or 16 different videos. There's 40 different worksheets. There's different discussion forum questions, different mechanisms for people to interact with the material. And all of it is designed to help people be at their best and adopt these skills for better living. So again, savoring, optimism, mindset is another one, thinking about different ways of understanding happiness. So from Aristotle, thinking about eudaimonic happiness, to Epicurus, thinking about hedonic happiness. So again, I talk a little bit about philosophy. I use a lot of humor. I break down big complex words into very easy little bite-sized practices, if you will, so that people can benefit from science and know that by adopting these skills, again, they've already been proven in the research literature. We know that they work, but that they can start applying this in their own life and start living the life, crafting a life that they want to live instead of just got stuck with somehow. So that course is available at happinessmatters.org. There's a version for individuals. There's also a corporate version. So if there are any corporations out there who would like to give the gift of well-being to their employees, please get in touch. Again, because there are just so many benefits to being happier in life, from health outcomes, workplace outcomes, parenting outcomes. The list is quite endless. And if we have the science, why would we not use it? So I'm hoping that people will join in.
I'm sure. I hope so too. It sounds incredibly exciting. And I'm sure that a lot of listeners from this conversation are going to look that up and quickly register for it.
Thank you so much.
Of course. And if there are other, say, books, podcasts, or resources that you think folks should know or look into if they wanted to know more about positive psychology, what would you say?
So one of the things that I love about positive psychology, maybe relative to other types of psychology, is that they're really focused on giving psychology away.
Mm.
So just a quick Google search on positive psychology interventions will pull up a lot of free resources. Also on my website, though, I've got a podcast series coming up, but there are many podcasts on positive psychology. So there's multiple books. Again, I mean, you can get them from the library, you could get PDF versions, but also a ton of books. So again, just Googling some of the main researchers. So Sonia Lyubomirsky, for example, Martin Seligman, Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, Ed Diener. There's a lot of different names. So make Google your friend and just Google, or even get on ChatGPT, positive psychology, help me improve my life. What are some different interventions that I could use? And that will bring up lots of resources and information for you as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that insight, because I'm sure that everyone's very intrigued after this conversation, and
I
I'm
hope
sure they'd
so.
like to look into this more.
I hope so.
Of course, of course. All right. So if you had to leave our listeners with one piece of advice or one thought or maybe even a challenge that you think they should think about today, what would that be?
Say yes more often. We spend so much of our lives, worrying about what people will think of us, what will happen if we fail, what will happen if something goes wrong, what will happen if somebody's disappointed or offended or whatever. And the reality is, nobody ever is. And if they are, it never lasts very long. And frankly, most people don't notice us. That's the sad truth as an adult. We feel the whole world cares about us. They don't. And it's really to invite people to say yes to opportunities. Just say yes. Have that be your first answer. And if you're scared or anxious or nervous, don't worry about it. Be scared, nervous, and anxious, but do it anyways. And you will realize that you can do a lot more than you think. There are a lot of opportunities out there. We just somehow say no to them all. And you can have a better life simply by saying yes to things. So say yes. It's 2025. Just say yes. And life is too short to be scared. Just do the thing.
Absolutely. I'll try to hold on to that for today, to say yes a little
Good.
bit more.
Absolutely.
So Dr. Lambert, it's been an absolute pleasure. Any concluding thoughts that you have for us?
No, just remember to say yes.
Absolutely. Will do. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank
Thank
you
you
so
so
much.
much.
Thanks for tuning in to the Bhavana Healing Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support helps us bring more insightful conversations your way. See you next time.